We will begin in 1 minute.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the council meeting for Monday, May 12th, 2025. I'm pleased to announce that the West Niagara Secondary School Vocal Quartet has recorded a rendition of O Canada. Everyone that can, please rise for the playing of the national anthem.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Niagara Region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Seeing none, before we approve the agenda, I would like to propose the consideration of discussion report PA 2516 immediately following the delegation from Hemson, as the report directly pertains to the consultant's presentation. Can I have mover and second? Councillor Howe? Okay. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Howe, Councillor Korstanji. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that the May 12, 2025 council meeting agenda be approved as amended. All in favor? That's carried. This evening, we have Hemson presenting Grimsby's intensification strategy and growth projections. We will hold all questions until the discussion report is on the floor for discussion. Please come to the podium. Good evening.
Excellent. Good evening, members of council. My name is Jacqueline Hall, and I'm an associate with Hemson Consulting. I'm a professional land economist and planner, and have been with the firm for 11 years. Over the next 10 minutes or so, what I'd like to do is walk you through the results of the draft intensification strategy report that was prepared by our firm for the town of Grimsby. With me this evening as well as Mr. John Hughes, who's one of the founding partners of Hemson, actually. He's an expert in land economics as well as market conditions. And John is here today to be available to answer any questions you may have on the findings of the report at the end of the presentation. Next slide. As everyone probably is well aware, the town is in the process of updating its official plan, known as the Envision Grimsby Official Plan Review. The process started in June 2023 and is currently in phase 4, which is the drafting of the new official plan. Our firm was retained by the town to complete an intensification strategy and accompanying growth projections as part of this review. It is intended that the analysis that was contained in our report, or that is contained in our report, will inform the growth projections in the town's new official plan over the planning horizon to 2051. Next slide. In the context of the results of the intensification strategy, it's important to understand the context in which the analysis was completed. So due to recent legislative changes, planning responsibilities have been removed from the region of Niagara. This happened at the end of March of this year. And as a result, the region's official plan is no longer a regional plan. It is now considered to be the official plan of the 12 local municipalities here in Niagara. Another way to think about it is that the town technically has 2 official plans right now, but will be integrated into one cohesive document once the Envision Grimsby exercise is completed. As part of this work, the town will be updating the forecast population and employment projections, which are currently in the region's official plan, to 2051. The reason for the update is that the town is on track to exceed these projections well before 2051, and the region's official plan identified 37,000 people for the town and about 15,000 employees. Next slide. So the analysis contained in our report and answered 4 key questions, which will also be addressed as part of this presentation. So the first being, does Grimsby have adequate capacity to accommodate growth? If you hit the next, the second question being, how much will Grimsby grow by to 2051? The third is, where will it occur? And the fourth is, what will it look like? So if we go to the next slide, based on our analysis, the town has significant potential to accommodate future growth, and this is despite the fact that there is actually very limited supply of effectively vacant greenfield land. What the town lacks in the available greenfield land, it makes up for in redevelopment potential. To gauge the development potential, our firm undertook a desktop review of sites across the town. Staff also looked at sites to determine the likelihood of which ones would redevelop or intensify over the short, medium, and long term. The timing was based on several factors, including whether or not individual sites had any barriers to redevelopment, the ability to create infill development on the same lot, if there is any ability to add vertical addition, so additional floors on top of existing structures, and the ability to consolidate lots into bigger sites. Looking at the ultimate build out of the town, which will occur well beyond 2051, there is potential to accommodate approximately 12,600 units around the GO station, and I'll show that area in a couple of slides, and about 14,600 units in the downtown area. This in no way suggests the town is going to build all those units by 2051. It's simply acknowledging that there is potential for upwards of that much amount of growth to be accommodated. There is also approximately 90 hectares of land suitable to accommodate industrial employment uses, and these lands are located either adjacent to existing or planned water wastewater infrastructure, which is a key factor in allowing these uses to proceed. Next slide. The town has experienced significant development over the past decade, with over 2,200 units being constructed within a 10-year period. So a very significant amount of growth. Of those 2,200 units, 60% of them, or about 1,400, were apartments. And when I use the term apartments, I mean the census definition, which includes those traditional apartment type buildings, but also condominiums as well. So you can see examples of these recent apartment and condo projects, obviously north of the QEW, just west of the Casablanca Boulevard intersection. And in the last decade, recognizing that this has been a considerable shift towards higher density development, this is a trend that we are expecting to continue. And we will note as well, it's quite interesting because before the last decade, the town really only had about 850 apartment units. So that is a very significant change in your built form and what we would expect to see in the future as well. Over the next 5 years, we anticipate the construction of new units to be slow. This is not something that is just happening here in the town, it's happening across Canada, particularly in our condo apartment market. There's a lot of factors that are influencing this, but this includes higher construction costs, interest rates, affordability issues, the list goes on. If we go to the next slide. In addition to understanding the development potential of the town, we do another part of the analysis, which is the market demand. So basically, we want to understand then the realistic amount of development that we can expect to occur in the town out to 2051. To help us understand this, we developed 3 scenarios which tested different factors that can influence the rate of growth. Scenario 1, which we referred to as the sustained growth scenario, is predicated on the construction of about 250 units on average per year out to 2051. And this scenario was generally predicated on the historic trends that we saw over the last decade or so. The second scenario, we called it the momentum growth scenario, and it assumes a higher demand of scenario 1 by about 100 extra units per year, so 350 units per year. We anticipate that the extension of the GO service to Niagara Region and the proposed station here in Grimsby will act as a catalyst for development under this scenario. So with the interest in the GO station, we would also expect additional demand in the downtown area as well. Finally, scenario 3 is what we call our accelerated growth scenario. It's really an unprecedented amount of growth here in the town. That would be about 500 units a year. This scenario would require a number of conditions to perfectly align in order to allow this to occur. And so that's arguably is the most aggressive scenario. From an employment perspective, all the scenarios are based on achieving an activity rate of 34%. That activity rate, it's a term we use in demographics. It's related to the ratio of employees to population. The town's current activity rate is about 33%, so we're proposing to maintain that out to 2051. And just a word of caution is that the scenarios that we developed as part of this exercise are, and especially when we're talking about average number of units per year, this is something that we talk a lot about when we do these types of forecasts, but certainly we would expect to see variation. So one year you're going to have more units than another, just like we've seen historically in the town. But we like to talk about averages because it's a way for us to gauge and understand how much growth we're expecting to see. Next slide. So for the purposes of the official plan review, we are recommending that scenario 2 be used. And this would also inform the town's master plans, such as the transportation master plan and the Parks and Rec master plan as well. So what does scenario 2 look like in terms of overall growth? Well, it's about 19,500 people being added to the town space. So that grows to a total population of 51,000 persons in 2051, which is significant. There's also an associated growth of about 7,100 employees for a total of 17,400 employees by 2051 as well. Using that average of 350 units per year, this amounts to an additional 9,500 units in the town over that planning period. Go to the next slide. So just to give a sense of where this growth is going to occur, as part of our analysis, we looked at 4 geographic areas. The first being the GO station area, so that's that color in light purple there. Then we looked at the downtown area, which is shown in orange. employment areas are in dark gray, and the remainder of the town is within the urban boundary, and that's shown in that light gray color. Go to the next slide. In the recommended scenario 2, the momentum growth scenario, the majority of growth will occur within the GO station area. About 63% of the forecasted population will occur there, 67% of the anticipated dwelling units, and 48% of the employment. The downtown will also experience significant growth, and then it would be followed by the remaining areas of the town. Next slide. So it can be challenging to visualize what the growth will look like in the town. So as part of this process, town planning staff did retain a local architecture firm to help create some conceptual drawings of what this growth could potentially look like in different areas. So these images, just to stress, they are for illustrative purposes only and are a sample of what certain developments could potentially look like. The actual configuration and design of these buildings will depend on site-specific proposals and, of course, specific planning requirements as well. So the first image you see here is an idea of what exists currently. So low-density residential, commercial uses. We see some large parking lots. And so the yellow area, it kind of looks green here on the screen on the PowerPoint presentation, but that represents the potential area of where the GO station could be. So we go to the next slide. So this now layers on additional growth. So this would be around the 15 years or so, what we would expect the area to look like. So you see that there's additional medium and higher density being brought into the area and filling in some of those vacant sites that were there previously. And if we go to the next one, the final illustration shows the build out to 2051 of the GO station area. So you can see that we have a much more predominant mix of higher density and medium density uses as we move towards that 2051 planning horizon. Next slide. So now turning our attention to the downtown area, this is once again illustrative of what exists currently today. We see some sites that are potentially underutilized, some minor vacant areas in the downtown as well. If we go to the next image, this then illustrates how intensification and redevelopment will be integrated into the existing uses as the area builds out. So once again, this is kind of that midway mark. And then if we go to the next one, this is continuing to layer on that redevelopment potential as we reach towards 2051. And it's important to note, and there is the disclaimer on the slide here too, that planning policy is going to play a really important role in where and what this growth is going to look like. Recognizing that developing within this area, there's of course sensitive uses there, and it really requires thoughtful consideration about what exists currently and then what's going to go there in the future. So planning policy is really good in the sense that it can help ease this transition by supporting small-scale incremental redevelopment. It can be sensitive to the context of the existing uses. We, of course, also want to support complete communities. We're required to do that under the PPS by considering compact mixed-use developments and also providing for a range of housing types as well. We also want to make sure that we're enhancing the public realm and offering places for people to recreate and to live. Adequate transition between the areas is also very important, recognizing that growth will be directed to particular areas within the downtown, so along main streets, for example. And it should also be noted that Appendix A of the report also provides some additional illustrations of what the cross sections of the GO station, for example, what that development might look like. And if we go to the next slide, that concludes the presentation. Lots of information, very brief, but happy to take any questions.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Chair, thank you. Just a few questions on clarification, and then I'll probably speak again around two. First off, how did we come up with the number? So I know that the region identified 37,000. Obviously, this is significantly more. How did we come up with that number? That's one of a few questions.
Yes, through the mayor. It's a great question. So this is the way that we built our forecast was really looking at a unit-based assumption. So recognizing that over the past decade, the town has seen quite a bit of development. It was averaging about 250 units a year, just shy of that. So that was our basis for scenario one, which is your sustained growth. Recognizing that there is this GO station that's coming in our assessment, it felt very reasonable to acknowledge that there would be a minimum of about 100 extra units per year in order to address that market demand that we expect will occur from the construction of the GO station. So that's how we built the scenario two. Scenario three is a bit of pie in the sky, to be honest, but it's to say if all the stars aligned perfectly, if all the market conditions were there, you have the development potential that you could accommodate that many uses, but we don't think that that's very realistic at this time. So that's why we went with the second scenario.
Okay, so that clarifies, I was going to ask about the pie in the sky things, but you kind of clarified that. So with this as well, you had said, so we're currently at 31,600. And somewhere in the report, I remember reading that 5,200 were in the queue, basically. And we haven't actually, this report doesn't actually account for that, right? So in addition to the, I think it was 37,000 and then the 19,500, that gave us 56,500. But then we also have to add another 5,200, right? So we're over 60,000 now? No?
Through the mayor, apologies if it wasn't clear. The pipeline of the 5,200 units is intended to be reflected in our analysis. So it's not in addition to what we have shown in the report.
Okay, so total population, 56,500, basically.
For scenario two.
For scenario two, yes, thank you.
Correct.
Okay, downtown boundaries, where are we talking downtown boundaries? All right, and actually, if you can just go through all the boundaries, that would be great.
Yes, through the mayor, and it's a great question. I don't know if we could pull up the map on the presentation again, but you'll notice on the map we had circles, and it was quite intentional that we did that. This exercise was really intended to say, these are the general areas in the town that we anticipate the development to occur. Apologies, I'll just let the clerk get to that slide there, right here. Thank you so much. And so you can see the circles don't have any hard boundaries, and that was quite intentional. What we wanted to say is that this is the development potential and the market demand generally within these areas. We didn't want to necessarily draw those hard boundaries at this point in time because we're really looking at that overall population and employment number to inform the official plan. This additional drilling down of those areas captures the fact that are things happening that would then allow a developer to perhaps choose to locate around the GO station area versus the downtown. So we didn't look at it from the perspective of a hard boundary. We took the approach of just general geographic areas.
Okay, so last question is, where are we as far as, do we get input into the next thing? Because there are things that I really like about this, as far as where the density is looking to go. And there are some things that I would hope that we could specify and kind of carve out as a council. So if you could just let us know where we fit into that, that'd be great.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of the difference is this study is really about the growth numbers overall. When we get to the official plan stage and we start to get into the detailed policies, we'll start to look at like the boundaries for the urban, the downtown. We'll start to look at the boundaries for the GO station areas and the individual policies themselves as like the heights, the types of units and those kind of things. So it's really the official plan stage that we'll get into some more of that granular detail rather than the growth study itself.
Councillor Vardy.
Okay, somebody get the AED for me. I'm having a real reaction to this. So, first of all, let me say thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, I've just got a few questions here. At the beginning, you said our growth was exceptional. I would say most people in town would call it being hit by a tsunami. So somewhere we have to find a balance in there. And if you're using the tsunami as the baseline, then everything is skewed to being overwhelming. And when I listen to this, I mean, some of the things that come to my mind are, who are we trying to please here? Is all of this because of pressure from the province? If that's the case, what's going to happen to small towns? Will they never exist anymore? Or will we have to move to, say, Nunavut, if we want to find ourselves a small community? So I've got real issue with these numbers, particularly the baseline that you've used is a baseline that I would say most people in Grimsby already feel overwhelmed by and feel they've lost something. So where is the community's voice in this growth? And where does the community get to choose how big we want to be? I just feel like this is being foisted upon us. And I recognize if you don't grow, you die. And I understand where you want to put the population growth. And I'm okay with that, although your answer to, well, there's no hard border, I want to know roughly where those little circles end, because I don't know where, is it going to go out to Bartlett Road and, oh, well, we just made the circle a bit bigger. I hate to be so flip, but I have a real problem with all of this. It's like, where does the community fit in? Where does the community's voice fit in? And where do we find that balance between what is natural growth and what's being foisted upon us, and our willingness to kind of just roll over? So maybe you can talk to a bit of that for me. Thank you.
Absolutely, and through the mayor, and perhaps I might also turn it over to Terry as well to help respond. So, and I'm sure everyone in the room is painfully aware of this, but municipalities are creatures of the province, and so a lot of this is coming from provincial policy direction in terms of where growth is to occur and how we are to grow. Just this morning, there was a number of recent changes to legislation related to transit-orientated communities and the projection numbers we're supposed to use for the purposes of official plans. And all of them are effectively requesting municipalities to take on more growth and more density. And so that, in effect, is being reflected through this process. I certainly hear what you're saying, and I think we could be more sensitive, especially to saying the word exceptional growth. It was exceptional in the sense of the historic trends overall of the town. So certainly that's some language we should be mindful of. And of course.
So then could we use a different baseline? Because this is not ordinary growth that you're using for your baseline. It is truly exceptional growth. So maybe all of these numbers need to be adjusted down a little bit. I mean, we've already way surpassed doing our part. And I'm okay with where you're wanting to have intensification, providing stable communities are being left untouched and are being protected. Because I think that's really important, because that's really all we've got left. But I think you need to revise your numbers based on something other than the exceptional growth.
Council,
Apologies.
sorry.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to say, certainly the scenarios that we have developed, I would just note as well, they are averages over the period. So there will be times where growth is perhaps happening at a slower rate. It's also there's also a lot of potential for growth to happen at faster rates over that period. There's also regular reviews of the official plan required as well. So we do put in those checks and balances to make sure that we're working towards numbers that make sense and align with what the province is requiring of us. Also recognizing that the past decade has shown the market interest in the town as well. So we are. Our job here is to look at also what we think the market demand will be, but I can perhaps stop there, and I'm not sure if staff have anything else to add, if that's fine with you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Part of what the region's growth numbers did say that is we have 98% intensification as part of our going forward, because we have basically fixed urban area boundaries. So where other communities can grow a little bit less because they have more greenfield land. We don't have some of those options. So we've tried to look at certain areas. And one of the things that the region's numbers did not include was the GO station area. So their numbers didn't actually include housing for that, which is a big shortfall, recognizing that we have to look at a transit-oriented community, which we have to meet 150 people per hectare, I believe, which is a pretty substantial number around our transit station area. So those are considerations we have to make as part of going forward. So there's a lot of planning regulations that we have to consider as part of our official plan review and as part of these growth numbers.
So if I may, Mr. my last question here. The mountain's been left untouched, and I read today there's going to be a big pile of money for infrastructure like water, sewage. Then why aren't we looking at developing or at least putting a marker down for some unique kind of development on the mountain, given that we have access to funds to do something that has always restricted us? And I'm not saying let's go put a pile of high-rises on the mountain, but I know of some very unique developments that are quite interesting, quite forward-thinking, that would allow us to responsibly and sustainably use some of the land on the mountain.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. One of the wonderful things about Grimsby and one of the harder things about Grimsby is the greenbelt land that we have is mostly specialty crop, where you cannot expand an urban area boundary. You cannot create a new urban area boundary. So we have no choice but to develop within our existing urban area boundaries. So we don't have the options that some other communities have.
So are our numbers skewed then, in that, they're looking at a land base of land we can't use and trying to force fit all this other stuff into what little land we can?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's part of why we've tried to intensify our growth in the GO station area to meet that demand that we're going to have to do as in requirement to provincial policy. We're also looking at downtown opportunities for infill and other things, recognizing that we don't expect a significant amount of growth. If you saw some of the diagram, it didn't show a lot of growth in the rest of the community in our existing neighborhoods. Maybe small intensification, but just not significant growth there. We're really trying to focus it in certain areas and we'll see that through the official plan review when we come out with the draft of it, where you'll see the policies and try to see that. Something to be clear is this is anticipated forecasted growth. It doesn't mean it will be there, but we need to make sure that land use and infrastructure is planned accordingly. And infrastructure planning takes several years. When you're planning for plants, when you're planning for parks, when you're planning for all the pipes in the road. So we have to look at the long term, because that can go far beyond 2051 as well. So it's important to look at a more reasonable number for growth in recognition that we have to plan for the infrastructure to support the land uses as well that are planned there.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So my issue is kind of with the growth numbers, and 250 units on average a year, as Councillor Vardy just described it as a tsunami. I don't think in any way is sustainable, and I don't think, especially in the start we've had to 2025, that we'll get anywhere close to 250. We'd probably be on track for around 25. And looking to our neighboring municipality in Hamilton, the first quarter, they had 83 housing units started, which is the lowest CMHC's ever recorded. I guess without diving too deep into the macroeconomics of the housing situation, has there been any factor of a downtrend in these growth numbers projections?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's an excellent question. And so we did provide commentary on that in the report. We also projected what the housing completions would be in 2026 and 2027, and we fully acknowledge that they will be very minimal. As I also mentioned in the presentation, that's a trend that's happening not just here in the town, but across Canada and Ontario right now as well. So certainly what we would expect to see is this this downward trend or this almost pause in development happen over the next kind of 5 years. There will certainly still be some completions, but it won't be to that same order of magnitude. So then what will end up happening is the growth will effectively ramp up towards the end of the planning horizon. So you make up for that slower growth period in later parts of the forecast period. But as I mentioned as well, there are checks and balances that we go through in these types of exercises. We have to look at long-range planning for all the reasons that were just discussed in terms of planning for infrastructure and appropriate land uses and a complete community. But recognizing as well, we also have to regularly review these numbers and follow what the province is requiring.
Thank you for your answer.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So the title of this is a strategy, and a strategy usually begins with the end in mind. So what's our overall aim, and what say do we have in this strategy is, I guess, my question, because I don't think that there's anybody up here that wants this. Like, I don't want to speak for other people, but the way that this looks, the type of density that we're talking about, I mean, even from a planning perspective, I see no mention of like a missing middle, which is what we continuously hear is missing in Canada. This looks like, there's the old saying, you know, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And my concern is that everything looks like a condo. Nothing looks like low-rise or, you know, semi-detached or anything that we know is missing in communities all over Canada for families. You know, we have plenty of condos and plenty of condos coming. What we don't have is places for families to live. And so I get the restrictions of the Greenbelt, and I know that it's going to be an official plan discussion, but will we have strategies in place for infill that allows for some of that? That's my first question. Then I've got some other questions as well.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So it's an excellent question, and we did address that in part in the report. So the remainder of the town area, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with it as well, the additional residential units or ARUs that we've been hearing a lot of talk about from the province. There's a number of different programs that have come out recently to incent exactly the type of units that you're speaking to. So looking at that gentle intensification, allowing families to add an in-law suite for their aging parents, those types of units are being encouraged or will be encouraged through official plan policy throughout the rest of the town. What that will look like is it won't be a condo, it won't be an apartment. Those will be adding an additional unit or two to existing homes. Mostly what we see is single detached homes adding those units. There's programs now that are coming out through the federal government for funding, private funding or personal funding for those types of units, and there's a housing design catalog as well. So that certainly has been accounted for in our analysis. The town has very few of those currently. There is more development interest we're seeing right now in those additional residential units or ARUs. And so our forecast did account for that. But those would be smaller units accommodated within the existing stable neighborhoods. That would not be done through an apartment or a condo.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So, I mean, those things are already permitted, though. Like, the province has already made those. So it's not, our official plan just has to come in, has to match provincial policy. So that doesn't address new construction in the kind of scale that we're talking about. And so I guess my question, I don't know how else to put this, is how can we prevent this? Because I have concerns about what this, and if you can, I don't know who's controlling the PowerPoint, but if you could put the PowerPoint back up there, the illustrations of growth. I don't see the QEW on that illustration of the GO station. That drawing could be the way that intensification occurs in any community across Ontario. There are no streets on, there are no, if you go to the map where it shows the buildings growing over time, thank you. I'm sorry, Katie, to put you on the spot like this. the streets are grids. It looks like Milton. It doesn't look like Grimsby. There's a train going through there, but I don't see the QEW. I don't see a curving road for the service road. I don't see anything that looks like Grimsby on there. That could be, in fact, the one thing that can't be is Grimsby. That could be any municipality in Ontario, but that is not Grimsby. And the problem with this drawing is it implies that Grimsby will grow in a Aurora or Markham type style where it grows from the middle out from that. But that's not what Grimsby looks like. So this very drawing is part of the problem of this presentation. And I don't mean to be offensive. Please don't take it the wrong way. It begins with the wrong assumption. And that is what we want Grimsby to look like 26 years from now. I don't think anybody up here is opposed to growth. But to go back to my question, because I don't want to preach. I want to genuinely ask, how can we prevent, what can we do to regulate growth and to make sure that it looks the way that we want it to look from a municipal perspective, and that it's not just opening up a jet or a tsunami, as Councillor Vardy mentioned before. What strategies can we put in place to do everything we can to make sure that it looks the way that we want it to look?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a very conceptual image of just the types of different styles of development that could happen. This is not meant to represent Grimsby. It's just trying to show how a space could develop over time. It doesn't have the QEW. It doesn't have all of the interchange or anything like that. So this was just an impression. How we can look at different types of development is actually through our official plan policies, where we look at the different development heights. We can look at different densities that we have, different heights for the buildings, and we will definitely have, through part of our conformity, but part of our policies as well, looking at the various types of development and having very permissive policies that also meet, especially in the GO Station area, the transit-oriented community requirements that we have to meet, because we do have to have certain density requirements in that area to meet the provincial standards. So it's a balance, definitely, but that's what we're trying to show is there might be different development forms. I'm not saying there's going to be that many or of that type, but it could be different types of development forms that we have to look at to recognize that we have to accommodate some growth, especially because the province is saying we want as many people as possible living as close to the GO Station as possible. So they're taking advantage of that and can really use that. We've also talked about linking the GO Station area to downtown and opportunities to really make sure that they work together and other things. So those are all things that we'll be looking through the official plan review. So you'll have those opportunities to look at the development form. This is just the growth number that it really sort of gives the input about how it will, what the number we have to achieve. But definitely through the policies, we'll have heights and shapes and sizes and context.
If I could, Mayor, so that drawing says GO Station area. So, I mean, I'm not trying to be argumentative, and I apologize if that's the way it is, but I think all of us know that in order to intensify, buildings need to get bigger. Anybody who played Monopoly knows you got to trade in 4 green ones for a red one, and anybody who played SimCity back in the day knows that that's the way it happens over time. When we get to a plan like this, I think it's very important that it looks like the area that we're actually talking about. And the reason why I think it's important is because there are very specific limitations in Grimsby that are the lake, that are the QEW, that are the train corridor, that are the hydro corridor, that are existing houses, that are the greenbelt, that are all within a stone's throw of that GO Station intensification area. So the last thing I wanted to say, because my time's up, is I hope that whatever we decide starts with a heritage lens. Okay, and if we start with a heritage lens, I think it's very difficult to end up with that in our downtown, with drawings that look like that. So let's start with the end in mind, with what we want to see the town look like, not with what we're being told it looks like. And let's do everything possible, I guess, to keep it that way. Sorry for going on, Mayor. I don't want to, I have a whole bunch of questions. Maybe I send them to you guys because I went on a rant instead of asking actual questions, so I apologize.
And just to relate, we're ultimately recommending that staff prepare a recommendation report, so that's what we're looking to. So, Councilor Korsanji, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just curious, I understand that we're forecasting for infrastructure and stuff like that. Have we considered, I don't see a lot of recreational space, if we're looking at recreational space for that added population, and if we're looking at fire and police services, because we have developed so rapidly, we're not seeing what we need in this area, and if we're looking at that, and water, sewage, cell service, those kind of things, those are all issues right now, and if we develop or potentially develop as rapidly as some of these numbers, those are definitely going to be strains, and I'm not sure if that's considered in the forecast, or...
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and that's why it's so important at this time to have growth numbers that we can go forward with. So because we have the transportation master plan going on, we have our parks master plan going on, we have our library services master plan going on. The region is undertaking a review of their water treatment plants. There's so many infrastructure-related studies going on right now. That's why it's so important to have solid growth numbers that will ensure that long-term planning for our infrastructure meets the needs of the land uses that will need that, because we need places to drink our water and play and learn and all of those things. So that's why it's part of planning policy that we have to plan those together, and that's why it's so important to look at adequate growth numbers so we're not under planning our infrastructure and having more population, so we have a deficit in that regard.
Sorry. Thank you, that makes sense. I just am concerned that if we say, oh yeah, these are the numbers, and then when all those other studies come up short and say, oh, you know what, we can't do this or we can't do this, then we've already sort of looked at those numbers. So while everything is sort of fluid and working together, it's sort of hard to say yes to certain numbers if we don't know if we're going to have the services or the staff or the recreational space to accommodate.
Councilor DeVoley.
Thank you. My question is to Ms. Hall. So these are the projections, or at least I look at this report and think that these are the projections based upon the available land that we have and a certain amount of intensification and so on. How does this actually compare to what the province is hoping we will do?
Yes, through the mayor. It's a really great question. And so under the current provincial planning statement right now, the requirement is that municipalities use projections that are in the official plan or projections that have been prepared by the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance does not prepare projections for the town of Grimsby. They only do it for the region of Niagara. So we did look at that as part of this process. We certainly are within those bounds because we don't actually know exactly how much growth they want to give to the town versus to Fort Erie or Welland. So it's a little bit of a tricky question to answer, but certainly we are predicting that or projecting that Grimsby would continue to have a portion of that growth, but it would be still less than what some of the other municipalities would have, particularly ones with greenfield development potential.
And I think that's where I was really going, is that the history of Grimsby in the last 5-10 years has been that we certainly carried or we experienced substantial growth. So I'll say that we carried the burden for much of the Niagara region was really here in Grimsby. We're starting to see it sort of creep along. I always say it creeps along the shores of Lake Ontario the farther you get from the CN Tower, right? So we're seeing our neighbors next door at the town of Lincoln start to experience that, but they have the great advantage of not being quite as, I'll use the word landlocked. They have more land, and they have more space that is not greenbelt necessarily. So That's what I mean when I say that they're not quite landlocked like we are. We're kind of squished between the Niagara Escarpment and, pardon me, the Niagara Escarpment, not a mountain. I can always say you can tell where someone comes from. If you come from Hamilton, people always call it the mountain because that's what they're used to. If you come from Niagara, we always call it an escarpment. But, we're kind of squished between the escarpment and the lake. And yet, as you go more east and you go to some of the other municipalities, they certainly have more available land, I'm going to say, outside of the Greenbelt to develop. So I look at this report as, okay, if we really, really intensify, this is the maximum we could probably handle. But within that, doesn't mean we have to carry the entire burden for the Niagara region, that there are other municipalities who hopefully will be able to accommodate some of this growth. And that's why I was curious as to, has the province really divvied up these goals of theirs so succinctly that, the town of Grimsby has a magic number beside it?
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll just add to that. And, it's one of the unfortunate things that has happened with some of the planning changes is that there is no more regional planning, right? So everyone is kind of working in isolation, but we still have, as Terry mentioned, the need to plan for infrastructure on a regional basis. The plant infrastructure for water and wastewater needs to understand exactly what each municipality is doing in terms of growth and where it's happening. And so this exercise is for planning purposes. It's really to understand and help to plan for that infrastructure need. And as you mentioned, it represents a threshold of where the town is going to go to 2051. And in that process, there is going to be continuous reviews to see, maybe the province will come out and say, this is what we expect of Grimsby. We know that there's expectations around the GO station now with the transit-orientated communities. We have to fulfill that. So that's really what this exercise is about.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, I think that what you've done is, as a firm and for the planning people, you've given some plan for the worst, okay? Hope for it being less, and then we can plan. But if you plan for too little, thank you, too little two-bedroom homes out in the middle of, let's say, the football field at the old high school. Well, that's not real. So we can't do that. You got to plan for the worst. And then we're going to give all that information to those people over there, and they're charged with making an official plan out of it. You've given us information. You've given us illustrative purposes only, and I was able to read that first line a couple of times, illustrative purposes only. So I got that, figured that, but that's what you've done. You've given us a tool for the toolkit, something to go to war with, but now we got to take it and put it into the official plan. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Chair, thank you. So I would rather take the approach of, we know that we are expected to grow and that we're active participants and we put out our desires and try to really carve out what we want so that we have some kind of control over this. So I'm just going to put it out there, what I would like to see. You've said that scenario 2 is the preference. What other town would you say is scenario 2 in the province of Ontario? Is there one?
Through you, Mayor. That's a really good question. And it's tricky because to compare municipalities, you have to look at the existing base population, the geography of it, so how many square kilometers is each municipality. There's plenty of cities and towns that are adding more than 250 units a year, but that's not an appropriate comparison to Grimsby because, as we've been talking about this evening as well, your urban boundary is fixed, you're landlocked, so you're only building up. So we can certainly work with staff to say this is maybe some comparable places where we've seen this type of growth happening really in the form of intensification and redevelopment. We certainly see it in municipalities within urban areas or downtown areas. So maybe if we don't have an exact comparison, because every municipality is unique, we can give you some examples of this is what they went through, this is what it now looks like, if that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to give my opinion, and hopefully we can kind of hash out something with the council. You know, I think maybe just hearing what everybody's saying right now, maybe scenario 1 is the one that we look at, because scenario 2 is 350 units a year. So 250 is, you know, maybe more realistic for Grimsby based on, you know, what we have right now. I don't necessarily have, again, housing is a priority. Our province that was just elected said this was a priority, so we can fight it or we can be a partner and do this properly. So GO Station, I don't see that being an issue. You know, the traffic seems to be an issue. Infrastructure, I feel like if we're going to put density somewhere, it just makes sense that it's the GO train area. So I don't have a problem with that. With the downtown area, I think right now we're experiencing a lot of headache for the people that currently live here. So if we're talking downtown, if that is like, you know, somewhere that's like the DSBN, like the central school there, that makes sense to me because there's adequate parking. We have walkable areas to get to the grocery store. So that's a lot different than saying, yes, we agree with that density, you know, right at the Food Basics Plaza. So that's a different kind of conversation. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on, you know, kind of where we're looking for the density. And again, we've had like upcoming in one of my, when I give my chair's report, our age-friendly advisory committee, you know, did a delegation and spoke on how, you know, our residents are aging and they don't necessarily want to be in a condo. So we need to make sure that we have areas that are walkable that also cater to those that are transitioning as older adults. So, so again, I just want to make sure that council has, you know, we're the ones that are kind of directing this as far as where the density is going and what our numbers are. But I'm hoping that maybe we can have a little bit of a discussion more on scenario 1 if, you know, if that's where council is leaning.
Just to comment that staff's going to be preparing a recommendation report, and that's when we as council can discuss all the further iterations of what we actually put forward when we approve something. Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Going to echo similar comments, but different than Councillor Sherwell's. I really think we need to revisit the two bubbles and the numbers that you had allocated to each. I'd really like to see them skewed more heavily towards increasing density at the GO train area and a lot less downtown. And this is something that echoed, well, I think positively, because I got elected at the doors, was bring the development down by the train, not by the downtown. Because as we mentioned several times tonight, we're landlocked, and I'll use Councillor DeVoley's highly technical term of squished. But that affects other things than just land use planning, like such as transportation. We cannot put another east-west corridor through this town. It's just not going to happen. What can we do to ensure that the intensification downtown is the missing middle that we want, so we're not here in 10 years talking about, do we put a road in the sky, or?
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions. When you look at doing these numbers for a certain square kilometer, do you look at our usable land or do you look at the entire picture of Grimsby? That's question 1.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So it depends on the area. Around the GO station, for example, we have minimum density requirements of 150 people and jobs per hectare. So that is gross hectare. So we do look at that type of density when we're doing these types of exercises. And other areas of the town, we might use different assumptions, but that's guided by provincial policy and standards in terms of
So to get to the
intensification.
number of 57,000 of whatever it was, did you look at the entirety of Grimsby in its space, landmass, or did you look at just the space that we're able to use? Because like these numbers are given, you're talking about so many people in a hectare or whatever, and I get it around certain areas you want more density, but to get this overall picture, I mean, are things skewed because we have a huge part of Grimsby that is not usable for this purpose?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we did look at individual sites to assess the redevelopment potential. So as outlined in the report, the majority of the development is expected to occur through intensification or redevelopment. So that could be underutilized sites like the parking lots around the GO station, for an example. So there is something there currently, but that would mean that new development would come into the area and replace what's there currently.
Okay, and then I guess my next question is, in terms of the numbers or that are being asked of us, or the growth potential that the province wants from us, do they factor in? I mean, we've got a new hospital. It's going to open maybe in the late summer. In 10, 15 years, it's going to be too small, right? It's not going to be able to serve the region the way it does as a community hospital. It's already too small. Where are we going to put already? It's hard to get into GSS, Grimsby Secondary School, because they're overpopulated. So we nearly double this population. Where does the province say, and you'll need this amount of land for new schools, new fire stations, and new hospitals? Because all of these things are, you can't look at it in isolation. And, we'll just be creating problems for ourselves if we don't factor that into the kinds of numbers we commit to.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, and absolutely. That is why these numbers are so important and why we need them now. As Terry was mentioning, the town's undertaking a number of master plans to ensure that exact thing, that we have enough rec space to accommodate the future population, that we have adequate different types of transportation and roads in order to.
Yeah, but you're talking intensification. We're already talking intensification. We don't have greenfield, right? So what are we going to do? Put schools in high rises? Put parks on rooftops? This is real, and we have to figure this out. And we've got to make sure that we don't commit to numbers that don't take into consideration reality.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Terry.
That's part of the challenge, is that we know the high school is smaller. We know, and it serves Lincoln as well as West Lincoln as well, and they are also growing.
They're full.
Yeah, no, I know. But that's part of our challenge, because we had very low numbers that were, if you look at our anticipated growth, we're probably already going to exceed them long before 2051. So if we're not looking at a growth number that is realistic for us, recognizing that the GO station is going to happen and we will have to accommodate that growth, we are going to continue to have those numbers included in infrastructure planning that going forward will make new infrastructure too small. And that's part of the big challenge, is that we're not thinking the long term. I don't think, and I think Jackie has said this a couple times, that we'll have to look at these numbers again in 5-10 years when we review our official plan again, because things change, the market changes, other things change. So we constantly have to look at it, but infrastructure planning takes a very long time. They have environmental assessments and a number of other studies. So if we're not looking at the long game, then we are missing out on those opportunities to make sure that we have the services that we need to service our population. So that's really why we look at some of these growth numbers and really try to merge some of the land use requirements with that infrastructure planning. So we're not under planning our infrastructure, which we know we're going to need. And we don't want to have undergrowth planned for our land uses as well.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. I said as a joke, if only every one of the municipalities had their own high school, like there was a Grimsby District Secondary School and a Beamsville District Secondary School, then we wouldn't have that problem of having to deal with overpopulation at the one high school that we have instead of the 3 that we had 10 years ago. But on a more serious note, the infrastructure discussion that what you just said about infrastructure, Terry, I think is really important. That was my point about the maps. I wasn't trying to be facetious about it. There are very distinct limitations to the sites near the QEW in Grimsby. And right now, a red light at the South Service Road and Casablanca during rush hour is already a crisis. Like, cars are backed onto the QEW when there's a red light. That's not, we're talking about 12,000 new, is it units or people? People, right? So, sorry, is it units or people?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's 19,500 people and it's 12,000 units.
Okay, so 12,000 units. I just took that number, it's almost comical. But what people need to understand, I think, is that means in order to allow for that kind of growth to happen, it would be a complete, it would mean, all of the car dealerships become housing, all the superstore becomes housing, like everything goes from the middle out. Now, also, of course, the Grimsby on the Lake is part of that area because it's 800, is it 800 meters? So, but I think the infrastructure, again, going back to what I said before and beginning with the end in mind, I think once we talk about the limitations of the site from an infrastructure perspective, because there isn't room to widen the QEW, there isn't room to create more space for cars on Casablanca or for cars coming off the highway. If we don't start with that knowledge, and we start with the opposite, saying we need to allow for 12,000 more units, we're creating a problem that we know we're going to have in the end. And so I think we need to be aware of all of the things that are happening. And I hope that we're going to have, and I think the mayor said, we're going to have an opportunity for further feedback. I hope the staff report considers those things. And again, I wasn't trying to make a joke of the map. It was, I really genuinely believe that those restrictions are important in the overall consideration. Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to shift away from residential for a second. I don't think there's much more to be said, actually, and I look forward to the staff report when it comes out. But I noticed that by 2051, you've noted there's a potential of 17,400 jobs, but that's not factored into any of the maps per se. So do you have any idea where they will be or what it's made up of, or how you came up with that number? I'm just curious. It's a really important factor, because it's taxes we get from those industries mean we don't have to tax the residents. So I'm just curious how you came up with the 17,400. Can you speak to that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. And if I could just, before I address that question, make a quick asterisk to the discussion that we just had. I apologize. I did say it was 12,000 units. It's 9,500 units. So I just wanted to make that clear. With respect to your question, Councillor, regarding where those employees will be accommodated. So we are forecasting 7,100 employees to be added to the town. In the residential land uses, so in the GO station area, in the downtown area, that will include employment that we commonly refer to as population-related employment. So that would be your retail functions, your doctor's offices, your dentist's offices. All of that commercial retail development would be located there. The employment lands, so those dark gray areas on the map, that is your industrial development lands. So that is where we would expect those types of jobs to be accommodated. And we did look at the development potential for those areas as well, for the employment lands versus what is population-related employment and institutional. So we can also provide those numbers in the report if that would be helpful, because I do appreciate on the employment side, we did include a more global number, but we can provide it by the various land uses. As well, I would say too, the GO station is very unique because it would attract a certain type of employment. So certainly office uses, we envision that would be located in that area, recognizing that that provides good access to obviously the higher order transit, which a lot of employers do look for when they're locating their offices in particular areas. Also the access with the QEW, although it poses issues for certain types of residential uses, it works quite well for some of the smaller offices as well. So that is something we considered.
So correct me if what you're saying is that the industrial commercial job or employment is not included in this particular
Through you, Mr. Mayor, apologies. No, all of the jobs in that 7,100, that includes your industrial jobs, your population related. I was just commenting on the geographies in which the types of jobs will be located. So the 7,100 employees that we're estimating, that includes your institutional growth, your commercial growth, your retail growth, your office growth, and your industrial growth. That's all
it's,
employees.
It's all in there.
Correct.
But and they're within those circles, those bubbles, as we've been calling it, those real technical word we've been using, within those bubbles, they're all within those bubbles?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there are certain types of uses that will be, there will be employment uses within those bubbles, but they'll also happen elsewhere in the town as well. I was just commenting on, because in the downtown area, we're expecting, residential development, that's the type of employment uses that tend to locate adjacent to residential development, like your doctor's offices, your banks, your retail functions. In the GO station, you're going to see things like offices in addition to those retail functions as well. That was my comment.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you. I think I just want to make some overall, draw some overall conclusions from this report. And I will use, my business planning background. When people would come and talk to us about starting businesses, I said it was always important to do revenue projections, kind of population projections, if you want to think of it in a comparable term in a municipality, and to do them under a number of scenarios as well. When you're starting a business, you've got super passionate people and they expect that the moon is going to come to them, right? But it could just be a sliver of the moon too. And, before you get into it, it's very good to actually do your planning based almost like this one, low, medium, and high. Because the truth of it is, none of these are going to happen exactly this way. Which is why I think it is important, and I feel the pain that we would like to land on one of them, but we're not going to land on any of them. We're going to land somewhere in between, and it's going to change year by year. I think the value in this report is that it helps us plan out, and I would go so far as to say that in our planning, we should almost plan based upon if scenario 1 is more prevalent, if scenario 2 is more prevalent, or if scenario 3 is more prevalent. Because wouldn't it be terrible to plan on scenario 2 and then scenario 3 comes true or some variation of it? So the true value of this is not in that we pick a scenario and say that's where we want to land. The truth of it is we have to be ready for all the scenarios, and we really need to look and project our future under each of them so that we know how we're going to manage each of them as they take place. And then you're absolutely right. Then every 3 to 5 years, we need to relook at it again, because that would be foolish not to as well, right? These things really are not going to pan out this way. They're going to be 1C or 2F or 3G. We can only use them to guide us and to know that if, we end up in scenario 3, we're going to need this type of infrastructure, we're going to need these types of roads, and so on and so forth. So I feel for you, and I feel for the challenge that staff now have as they go back and take that report and try and figure out how to bring all the other components of it together. Because quite honestly, this crystal ball, it's very fuzzy still, right? It's very murky, and we kind of have to pick something, but we also need to be prepared for, different scenarios that may happen that we're not expecting.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Mayor. I suggest we call the question.
I'm actually combining both of these because essentially Terry's spoken. Unless you want to add anything else to your report? No. I think we're good, so I'll combine both resolutions. I'll read it. I need a movement and seconder. Resolve that the delegation from Henson and the report PA 2516 draft Grimsby intensification strategy and growth projections dated May 12, 2025 be received and the staff be directed to prepare recommendation report. So we need a movement and seconder for that. Sure.
Through you, Chair, thank you. I just want clarification. So if we don't necessarily want scenario 2, are we voting it down and then we go to something else?
No, I don't think we're at that level. It's just, this is just from the consultant.
We're only
and
receiving the
that's their
report. We're not.
recommendation, and we're going to get the report from staff, and we'll see what the report's like. We'll debate that.
Okay.
And it's up to council to choose a recommendation.
Okay, so
or
we're not
defer
at,
it
we're
even,
not at
so.
the recommendation phase at all?
Definitely not.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
So
The resolution be on the screen so we can see the exact wording?
yeah, I can read it again. I can get a mover and seconder and read it. It's just combining the delegation because we started to speak on both. So I'm combining the delegation and the growth projection report. So it's number, well, it's not numbered, but it's the two different things. Yeah, there we go. Councillor Bradzi is the mover, seconder, Councillor Howe. All right, moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Howe. Resolve that the delegation from Hempson and that report, PA 2516, draft Grimsby intensification strategy and growth projections dated May 12, 2025, be received, and one, that staff be directed to prepare a recommendation report. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Terry. Up next, we have Regional Councillor Seaborn's update. Welcome, Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I'm glad I'm tackling the economic development, not the planning part of this. We heard some numbers here about how big they want Grimsby to go. I'm going to tell you that the region of Niagara, at the end of December 2024, reached 539,000 people. That's up almost 40,000 people in a very short period of time. So yes, it's certainly growing. I wanted to give you an economic update because I think hand in hand goes planning and economic development. So, I mean, this was planned perfectly to have both this evening. Within Grimsby, you have a 4-phase economic development project right now. It's that Grimsby Innovation Center project. It's already started the major demolition. The $120 million construction will span 7 hectares. It'll be built in 4 phases over the next 2 years. Now, ATCO bought out NRB just last year, and they'll occupy 122,000 square feet of this project. And once the combined 4 before projects are completed, 350,000 square feet will be occupiable for industrial use. Looking at probably 400 jobs being created here. On a wider scale, the Niagara region has partnered with the local municipalities to promote, shop, support, and share local. The initiative is to boost the local economies and encourage pride in supporting local businesses. The campaign highlights the importance of supporting local shops, services, restaurants, suppliers, and let's keep money local. Signs and printed material are available through your Economic Development Office and your Chamber of Commerce. As part of the program, a video has come out. I did include that in the report, so there is a chance to check out that little video. It has to do with a family that's just moved to Niagara and what you can expect coming into Niagara for the first time. Meanwhile, our neighbors in Lincoln have formed a tariff response team to collaborate with their downtown BIA and the Chamber of Commerce to help businesses navigate the challenges that are being posed by the ever-changing trade policies and tariffs. A little further down the street, St. Catharines has approved a temporary Canada First procurement policy for Canadian-made products and services. I think you're going to find most of the communities are looking at that same sort of thing. One more step up, the Government of Canada has launched a $6.5 billion aid package to support Canadian businesses impacted by U.S. tariffs. Changes to the employment insurance will allow businesses to reduce worker hours, but compensating for wages. Finally, the province of Ontario is providing $11 billion in relief to support workers and businesses impacted by the economic uncertainty with the U.S. trade tariffs. These efforts aim to protect Ontario workers, diverse trade, and build more resilient and competitive economy in the future. Now, I'd like to come out on a personal note here. As a member of GDAC for 12 years, 8 of which was while I was on municipal government, I have to commend the work of your current GDAC committee. The great work that they've done has shown a lot of economic improvement in Grimsby. The committee, with the help of Frank Mealy and Reg Frake, who is at the helm, have advanced the economic development in this town pretty substantially over the last few years. So having had the experience where we didn't get very much done for a while, congratulations to those that have. Thank you.
Councillor DeVoley.
No, I was asking to be recognized. Just wanted to share with, I guess, the public and with our regional chair a few comments, and then I have a question as well in there. So you noted in here sort of what other municipalities are doing about a Canada First procurement. And I wanted to share that on March 27th, our Finance Committee, after kind of, I'll say, working on this for about a month, passed a recommendation to Council on a Canada First procurement policy, which we approved on March 31st. And unfortunately, it didn't make it into your report. So just giving a shout out to the fact that we have been working on that, have passed it, and now we're learning to live with that. And when we say that, I guess I'd like to just add a thought to that. Everybody is about Canada First, and we certainly appreciate that, but there are so many things that come from around the world that we can't just automatically assume that if it wasn't grown or 100% made in Canada, that, we shouldn't be going there, right? Life is very gray. We are very integrated with with other countries and so on. And so I do remind people of that yes, Canada First, but you got to really think about this. It's not nearly as easy as it is to implement. So that's just my first comment. My second question, though, you mentioned the town of Lincoln and their tariff response team. And certainly as we've been watching these scenarios play out with our neighbor to the south, I kept thinking, what what would I be doing if I were still in practice and trying to advise my business clients? And the truth of it is, tariffs and customs and duties are a highly specialized field. Like highly specialized as in CPAs, and there are very few of them, but who really specialize in this field and command quite a substantial dollars for this expertise, right? So you mentioned the town of Lincoln doing it. Can you expand upon that and tell us exactly what they are doing and how they are doing it?
I really wish I could. I'm going by a report, by the way. I was aware that Grimsby had a procurement plan, but my report came from the Economic Development Office, and that was for February and March. So I think we missed it, but it'll be in the next update. So that's exciting news. I wanted to give you just a brief idea of what other communities were doing within the region. I didn't go into St. Catharines too much or into any of the others. I thought it was interesting with Lincoln because Lincoln is partnering a little bit with St. Catharines on a tourism, looking at the benefits to the more agricultural part of Lincoln, whereas St. Catharines has more of the performing arts and the more specialized stuff. I think the whole idea here, Councillor Davoli, is showing that communities can work together. And if you work together, you get more out of it, and you work through this as well. And as far as your comments with the tariffs, it's got everybody scratching their head. One day they're on, one day they're off. I think it's going to settle down. That's my own personal comment. But it's just nerve-wracking for everybody right now, and you can see it in the employment numbers. This report was done up at the end of March. It's now mid-May, and of course, there's been a whole lot of changes as far as employment and the economic nature of things right now, and I hope we see some smoothing out, but certainly there's some good stuff in there as well. Thank you.
If I could just add to that, I guess, I don't see our role as a municipality in advising the businesses here in Grimsby on, what the tariff rules are today, tomorrow, the next day, and so on. And that's why I said it's a highly specialized field and truly a moving target every single day, right? So I don't see our role as a government in offering highly specialized advice that way. Certainly, if there was going to be a role, it would be in the economic development side of, how can we help open up some doors perhaps to another country? Who can we refer you to for more information, that sort of thing, right? I'll call it a networking role perhaps, or things like that. And that's why I was curious when we call it a tariff response team, as to what exactly are we trying to do and what are we even capable of doing, right?
I think actually it's the regional plan, which is the shop support and share program that looks more at what we as a region can do. I mean, we're really reliant a lot on the states. We're like throwing a ball distance between here and there. And I think the idea is to make people aware that keeping your dollars at home has a big benefit. I remember reading something from Lynn O'Grislow. I don't know if you remember Lynn, but Lynn is quite the buy local, eat local type person. And she said, for every dollar you spend in your own community, 80 cents of that stays in your community. Whereas if you buy it outside of your community, more of it is dispersed. So there's a lot of benefit in thinking about staying local and buying local.
Councillor Frigg.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. First of all, Michelle, congratulations on your new position as chair of the Regional Economic Development. I don't know if everyone around the table knew that, but congratulations. I just want to clarify that it's no secret, and the Grimsby, the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce has done an immense job at contacting, I would say, almost every single business in this region on tariffs. They've held a number of seminars, a number of breakfast meetings, and so on and so forth. They've had the commissioner of trade, and I mean they've done all kinds of things. So I would say that every single business in this town or in this region and in Grimsby, they know where to go. I know our own chamber is also working very closely with the Greater Niagara Chamber as well. So they have set up a team that works with businesses on any kind of work or help they need on tariffs. And hopefully by me saying this tonight, we'll get the message out as well. So I am not really concerned about it. They know where to go.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Sharwa.
Thank you, through Chair. I'm just going to make this really quick. Thank you. You always get back to me. Anytime I call you, you pick up the phone, so I really appreciate that. And I don't want to make this about the cameras, but because I know that's not your issue. But if you can just really quickly just let us know what's coming right now. And I know it's not your problem, but I just want to be able to have that information.
Now, you see, I promised I wasn't going to talk budgets or cameras tonight, so I didn't bring it up. There are cameras that are by the Park School. They are live but not recording, so you should not get ticketed until the end of May. However, it's good practice, so please remember that the small area around the schools is now 40 all the time. They've made some real changes. I mean, there's been a few of us counselors that have said, the program is there, but let's try and smooth it out a little bit. And one of them was the signage. The signage had to change. The other thing about, well, it's 40 during this time and it's not 40 at that time, and during this month and on those days, too much signage, it was too hard to read, and everybody's glad that that's gone. There's still a couple things we're working on, and one is with regards to the ticketing. Ticketing 28 days after the fact is ridiculous, and it's unfortunate because some people don't realize that they've gone through a speed area until the tickets start coming in. And by then, they're upset, and they've got every right to be upset. If you're going to get a ticket, if you were a police officer, you'd have the ticket by the time you got back in your car and left. The other issue is there is an issue with regards to some vehicles that aren't being excused where they should be. And with that, there are a few of us that are going to be meeting with the commissioner about trying to make sure that emergency vehicles are properly recognized when they go through the lights. It does mean that they have to have their flashing lights on at the time, but there's little quirks out there that are still needing to be fixed. Is it working? I still think it's working because people are driving smoother. Coming in today, everybody went past Blessed Trinity at 40. I know because I was behind them and I thought, way to go. The camera's been gone for a while, by the way. But yeah, just keep aware of it. And they're trying their best to make sure that people are aware of what the speeds are, where they are. It's just in front of the schools. And let's just be safer out there.
Thank you.
Just to add to that too about the cameras, since it was brought up, I'm glad that we're trying to look into emergency vehicles. Maybe there's a simple process to just rescind that ticket right away, because I certainly know it's taken a lot of staff time and probably 10 times the amount of the actual infraction. So it is coming to Public Works, a memo from the region for the next Public Works meeting. So next is Councillor DeFlavio. You're getting lots of questions tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, since we've got you on the hot seat, so at Public Works, we received a report that talked about upcoming projects, and for years now, Casablanca has been one of those upcoming projects. We were told the last time, 2025, for the service road, it goes to the discussion from earlier tonight about the changes to infrastructure and all those things. Do you have any news about, because the construction is supposed to be 2025, and we're now in the middle of May of 2025, and I don't know if the design is even complete yet, so I'm curious as to when that's going to occur, because construction season has begun, because the two seasons in Canada are snow removal and construction season, and I don't see anybody on Casablanca doing work. So if you have any information on that, if you don't have it tonight, but you can get it for us, that is great. You're always great, it was mentioned earlier, you're great at getting back to us about it, so if you can bring it to the next meeting or whatever, I would appreciate it.
Casablanca, that's because everybody's working on the QEW down by 7th. I don't know if you've been there lately. Avoid it at all costs. That plan is done. It's completed in the design phase. They are just waiting for MTO to sign off on it. And now they're looking at doing it right up into Highway 81, or Regional Road 81. So the whole stretch. We just need MTO to sign off on us, and it does have everything to do with the possible expansion of the QEW at this area. I don't have any further details on it. That's the last I've heard of it.
I ask Sorry, Mayor, through you. So are those designs, you said the designs are complete. The most recent report that we got from our Public Works was at 90%. So are those designs available online so we can share them with people? And if so, and if I could just Google it, I apologize, but I haven't seen them yet. So if you could tell us where to find them, then we'll go look for them ourselves.
Well, I've never Googled them either, but according to the report I've got, they are 100% done, and we're just waiting for MTO.
Councillor Vardy.
So at the risk of causing controversy, with respect to speed cameras, what's the problem we're trying to fix?
I think I'm going to cut you off there. I think this meeting's going long enough. And
I have a question.
All right, but be brief, because...
So they've been effective in slowing down traffic, but that's not where the accidents are. The accidents are at intersections. So why is the focus there on slowing traffic instead of putting a focus on where the accidents happen? I don't believe there's been any reported accidents in front of schools, so all I see is a cash grab. So I'd like you to bring that back to the region and ask them what's the problem they're trying to fix, because this wasn't it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Seaborn. You're free to go now.
Thank you, Mary.
Up next, we have chairs' reports. I'd ask that all the chairs make the reports brief as possible, please. Councillor Frake, go.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I will make it brief because it was a very brief agenda. We met on the Corporate Services met on April the 14th, 12 p.m. as usual. We had one delegation which had withdrawn. It was about a cannabis in Grimsby, so that didn't happen. We received 7 sets and accepted 7 sets of minutes, 4 for the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, July 11th of 24, November 14th, 2024, January 9, 2025, March 13th, 2025. We received Corporate Services Committee minutes of February the 10th and 2 sets of minutes for the BIA, February 12th and March the 12th. No consent reports. We did receive a private property parking bylaw discussion report, and we received a civil ceremonies fee amendment report. There was no correspondence, there was one other business which was related to the delegation we didn't have about cannabis, and that was it. Very short, quick meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frake. Up next is myself with the Planning and Development Committee report. That was on April 23rd, 2025. We had a public meeting for 129 Mountain Street, and we also had a public meeting for 564 Kemp Road East, and we had one report, report PA 2514, and that was on proposed official plan zoning bylaw amendments for additional residential units. Up next, we have Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you. The Finance Committee met on April 24th, and it too was a reasonably short meeting. We got it done in just under an hour. After approving agendas and previous minutes and so on, we have a budget amendment that we are recommending Council approve tonight, and that is for additional funding of $12,000. Our library art gallery building is in, I'll say, dire need of a roof repair. And so the recommendation is that be approved so they can go ahead and do that, and it will be funded from the Library Facilities Reserve and from our General Parks and Recreation Facilities Reserve. Our 2024 Development Charge Reserve Fund statements were presented to us, and they were received by the committee with the council's approval tonight. The treasurer will then be authorized to put them publicly on our town's website, so everyone can read those as well. We had our monthly report on the Peach King Center expansion and the cost update, and those are still on budget, although we are starting to tap into that contingency. And the last significant item on the agenda was the formal presentation of the tax levy and the tax rates, and they are attached and do go on at some length because we have about 5 or 6 different ones that make up that component. And the last thing that the committee has decided to implement, I'm going to say, is that under other business, we would always be carrying any business from previous minutes that we haven't actually resolved yet. And so we'll sort of have what I'll call an outstanding list that will come, that we'll be updating and reviewing to make sure that nothing falls in the cracks and that those items are taken care of. And so, if you want to, you can always go to our minutes and actually see what is still in progress as well. And that concludes my report.
Up next, Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. So we actually had quite a full meeting, but I will try to make it as brief as possible. We had a delegation from the Age Friendly Advisory Committee who provided an update on their 2024 annual report, just kind of went over their successes and advocacy for seniors in the community. I just wanted to point out they had completed a survey with 197 responses, mainly Grimsby residents, lived here for quite a while. Some of the results, and I'm just saying this so that we can keep this in mind in the future, the top 3 things that they had kind of gathered from the results were a need for information about where to find community support and health services. So specifically, they were talking about more Grimsby PSWs and family doctors needed. Some issues with the NRT transportation for older adults. So I had suggested if they were up to it, possibly coming back with some recommendations we can bring forward to NRT. The third one was housing. So subsidized housing for those on ODSP, and Grimsby needs more affordable transitional housing for older adults. Like we had discussed earlier. The second thing, we had a discussion report about a user study fee project update from Optimus SBR. That's moving on to, so the development of that methodology was explained and it's outlined in the report. We had a delegation from the consultant at Treehouse Energy Services with a report that had recommendation that council approve the corporate greenhouse gas emissions management plan with targets of 30% in the next 10 years, in year 2034. We heard an update about the major refrigeration and Peach King Center expansion and renovation project. Project is 40% complete, continues to be on budget, as you heard from Councillor DeVoli. And there are budget reports that continue to come to the Finance Committee as well for a kind of approval and for a second opinion. We know that there's Major Refrigeration has announced they've committed to $500,000 for sponsorship for the naming rights. So that it's the Major Refrigeration Peach King Center, and that's for the next 10 years. The anticipation, the Major Refrigeration Peach King Center is anticipated to be done and ready January 2026. Unfortunately, our staff were awesome and able to make sure that all ICE programs were still able to operate this season. So through the construction, we'll still have ice hockey and skating programs. The Community Services Department updates included the summer recreation. That registration began, and it's showing that there's a strong interest in the camps and programs again. Pickleball courts opened on April 25th, and there's been a positive response from both recreational and competitive players about the new booking and allocation system that we're trying out, so that's good news. The town received a $10,000 grant from from CN through Eco Connections from the Ground Up program to install a microforest. So I know that's something that Councillor Vardy is probably going to be very happy about, and it should be located at Kingsway Park. And the nice thing about that is that the NPCA will be involved, and it kind of meets some of the requests that some of the residents in the neighborhood were asking for as well. So that should be a pretty great thing. Staff replaced an old play structure at Bell Park. So that was in dire need of replacement, and that's done. And for Grimsby Beach residents, they'll be happy to hear that staff's looking at upgrading the Grimsby Beach stairs. They're with a wooden structure that will be elevated off the ground to allow for drainage in the area during heavy rain events. So that they're expecting to get that kind of started in the spring. And Councillor Kristangi and I had a conversation with our director about that, and she's kind of brought forward some ideas. So hopefully we see that sooner than later. 40 Mile Creek Bridge is currently on hold to follow the terms under the NPCA permit, which prohibits any in-water work between March 15th and July 15th. So as soon as that kind of has passed, I am assured that they are ready to go, and we should have that wrapped up in the summer. And a few events held by Community Services Department include the Active Living Fair, Community Safety, I've got about 10 seconds left, Ways Goose, Book Fair, Civic Recognition Awards, and I know a lot of people will want to speak to those in announcements, so that is it. Thank you.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So I'm going to highlight a couple of things. The Grimsby Decorative Banner Program, you might recall that the Royal Canadian Legion had asked for a change name of Clark Street to Veterans Way. Unfortunately, because of 911 restrictions, we're not able to do that, but instead we're going to put commemorative signage up at Christie and Clark and Ontario and Clark intersections. So above the sign, large signage that will say Veterans Way. The town's also launching a new decorative banner program in 2025, allowing non-commercial community-based banners that align with town values. We've had poppies, we've had Christmas-type banners in the past. So that includes the town will cover the installation costs for banner arms, and in this particular case, the Legion will pay for production and permit, which is about $5,200. But future operational costs for these banners will be considered in the 2026 budget cycle. The other thing I wanted to mention was the Public Works Department update, which I would encourage people to look at themselves, because there's a lot of really good detail and answers a lot of questions about what's happening all over Grimsby and in specific communities. The couple things that I want to talk about are things that we've talked about repeatedly, and that's the downtown water main and complete street improvements that's coming, is in the works, and the transportation master plan study that's in the works. There are other things like the Dorchester sidewalks and various other items that are mentioned. I would encourage people to read those over. Most of your questions are answered in that overview, and I'm sure that our staff, who did a great job putting this together, will also do a great job answering any specific questions you have about that, and I'll leave it at that, Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor DeFlavio. Up next, we have adoption of the previous minutes. Councillor Howard, do you still want to lift that? No, you're okay? All right. So can I have a mover and seconder to approve the previous minutes? Moved by Councillor DeVoli, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Moved by Councillor DeVoli, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that the following minutes be approved. Corporate Services Committee, April 14th, 2025. Council, April 14th, 2025. Planning and Development Committee, April 23rd, 2025. Finance Committee, April 24th, 2025. Special Council, April 28th, 2025. Community Services, April 29th, 2025. Public Works Committees, April 30th, 2025. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have the council endorsement package. Can I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that the following council endorsement packages be approved. Grimsby Economic Development Advisory Committee, April 3rd, 2025. Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, April 8th, 2025. And Age Friendly Advisory Committee, April 15th, 2025. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive board minutes? Councillor Korstanji, Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the following board minutes be received. Grimsby Economic Development Advisory Committee, April 3rd, 2025. Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, April 8th, 2025. Age Friendly Advisory Committee, April 15th, 2025. And Joint Fire Services Advisory Committee, April 16th, 2025. All in favor? That's carried. I'll start with announcements. I'd like to take a moment to announce that May 2025 marks the 25th anniversary of the Walkerton tragedy, where 7 people died and more than 2,000 fell ill after the town's water supply was contaminated with E. coli. This is a powerful reminder of the importance of clean drinking water, and I would like to thank our public works staff for the effort in protecting Grimsby's drinking water system. Our water being the cleanest, Ontario's the cleanest jurisdiction in North America, I believe, and has the safest tap water, and it really is because of that tragedy 25 years ago. I would also like to announce that May 4th to 10th, 2025 was the 56th annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and I want to thank our clerks team for their dedication and behind-the-scenes work to help Grimsby run smoothly every day. A couple other things. I know we had on last Monday, we had the Civic Recognition event, and I'd like to re-congratulate all the recipients and really commend staff for doing such an amazing job. It was really a great event, and I've had so many people let me know how happy they were with the staff's running of the event. Also this week, it was a really busy week, actually. Myself and Councillor Howe were able to attend the Niagara Chicken grand opening on Grimsby on the Lake, and if you haven't tried it, it's really amazing chicken. On Friday, again, with several members of council, we toured the major refrigeration Peach King Center, and it was really interesting to see how that's coming along, and just how really the one thing that really impressed me is the walking track and the size that it's going to be, and how we really did a good job. Staff really did a good job, and the consultants with a design that I think is going to be second to none in the region. On Saturday, there was Community Safety Day up at Southward Park, and I was able to sit in a sledge hockey sledge, and it's easier to get in than to get out of them, that's for sure. And there was a number of people up at Southward that day, and it was really good to see the community up there and all the different groups in Grimsby supporting a safe community. And also later that day, I was able to attend Grimsby's lawn bowling. Councillor Charwa and Councillor Korstanji were there, as well as Regional Councillor Seaborn. Grimsby Lawn Bowling Club is celebrating its 130th anniversary. It's the second oldest lawn bowling club in Ontario, which is very commendable. So now with that, I'll move to anyone else that wants announcements. All right, seeing none, I guess I took enough time with that, so. Can I have a mover and seconder for the consent report? Moved by Councillor Devoldy, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Devoldy, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that council hereby approves the following item, and the consent item be approved on the recommendation as contained therein. TC 2510, the report TC 2510, 2025 high school bursaries dated May 12th, 2025 be received. All in favor? And that's carried. Now we move to notice of motion. I'm just wondering, is given, yeah, if you'd like to speak to that, Councillor Charwa?
Thank you, through Mayor Jordan. Yeah, so I did speak with Kevin today, and he was very thankful for all of our council members that reached out and helped, and he was very thankful of our CAO, Sarah, and Brandon for jumping on this, and he's been so thankful for all of us and the community support, everything, and it sounds as though he is good now. So we got on that very quickly, and he's great, and he doesn't need any more support. So I'll withdraw my motion. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Charwa. Now we move to correspondence. Can I have a mover and second to receive the staff memo on strong mayors? Tonight there is a memo on the agenda regarding the recent extension of strong mayor powers to 170 municipalities, including the town of Grimsby, as announced by the province on April 9th. These powers, now in effect as of May 1st, are intended to help municipalities support key provincial priorities, including housing and infrastructure development. The memo outlines the new responsibilities and authorities assigned to the head of council, along with the related processes for decisions and vetoes. More information about the budget process will be presented by the finance staff soon. While these changes represent a significant shift in governance, the CAO, clerk, and I are committed to ensuring a smooth transition and continued collaboration between council and town administration. The memo is on the agenda to be received by council for information. Are there any questions from council? Well, let's get a mover and seconder, and then we'll open it up to questions. Moved by Councillor Bradsey. Seconder, Councillor Frake. Questions or comments? Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So I know that the ship has sailed, but what concerns me about the strong mayor powers is the change to the fundamental dynamics of the way that councils are run. Giving the mayor special veto powers, and not you, Mayor, mayors in general. I want to make it clear, like, this isn't about you, and it's just what it does to municipal governments in Ontario is what my concern is. We have been lucky enough in Ontario, and Grimsby's run for more than 100 years successfully in the process that we have. We've been lucky enough in Ontario to keep political parties out of municipal government. When you give one position on council strong powers, it's an incentive to politicize and polarize that position. It's also an incentive, in my opinion, for developers to fund people running for that position, because that position has now more power. It's not just a chair position anymore, and it's not directing traffic and leadership. It now has very specific powers that allow the mayor to make decisions and to direct council in a way that has never existed before. It's a very, I don't want to diss our neighbors to the south, but it's a very American-style approach to politics that I don't think is necessary in Ontario. I think that working collaboratively and sometimes losing the vote, which I do all the time, I lose votes all the time. That's the way that politics work, right? It's a democracy, and we've been successful enough in having 9 votes that all have equal value here at the council table. And what this does is it changes that, and that's my concern. Again, it's not about you, and that was why I brought it up at the last council meeting. I think that I'm concerned about who takes your place, and I'm concerned about other mayors and other municipalities in Ontario having powers that we don't think that I don't think that they need. So I don't know if I did draft a notice of motion giving at the previous meeting that we got struck down at that meeting, that gave feedback to our member of provincial parliament and to AMO and about how we as a council feel about it. If people don't agree with it, that's fine. But I would love it if they wanted to tweak it or do whatever changes they wanted to it. But if we did give feedback to the province as a council saying we were happy with the status quo and we're not happy with the changes, and if other people are willing to support that, that's great. And if not, I lose again, and that's life. Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Vardy.
Believe it or not, I too agree with Councillor DeFlavio. And it's nothing personal to you, Mr. Mayor. But I think it erodes democracy. I also think it puts any mayor in a very vulnerable position to being pressured by, various groups to override. Now, if all of council feels one way, I mean, it's hard to convince, or it's hard to put pressure on 9 people, but not so hard to put pressure on 1. So I'm not worried about you, Mayor, but I don't like it in theory coming from the federal government. There is a very clean line between the political side and the bureaucratic side. And I'll just leave it at that. I think it erodes our democracy. So, and if there were enough people who wanted to send comments to that effect, I would be supportive of that. Now, there may be some things that there may be additional powers or, leverages that can be given to a mayor, but the way it's sort of set out here, I'm not comfortable with. Thank you.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons, but Councillor DeFlavio, you touched on it. My biggest fear, my biggest concern about this whole package is October of 2026 and what the hell comes next. Because right now we know what this group does and we know what we can expect from each other. It's not always what we want to hear, but that's the way it goes. But we don't know what's going to happen October 26.
Councillor Frick.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I feel totally different about all this. I was reading the Ontario Municipal Act just the other day, and it says in there, unfortunately or fortunately, it is the role as Chief Executive Officer of a municipality, the head of council shall be, and they mentioned in there that the mayor is the CEO of the corporation. But it never gives the mayor any powers that related to an executive position. And I think it's about time that a mayor who speaks for the town as a whole gets elected by the town as a whole, where we are elected, like each of us, or 1/2 of each ward. But I believe that the mayor should have more powers. I wish we had a mayor with more powers in the last term of office. Maybe things would have been different. And we have to give a little bit of credit to the people. They elect us. I like to think that they go out and do their homework. The people around this table tonight are elected by the people. So they're the ones that put us in power. So let them be the ones that choose who they want to represent them as a mayor and a CEO. So I think we belittle the position of mayor by not allowing them to have strong powers. He signs contracts on behalf of the town. He signs the bylaws on behalf of the town. He's responsible for all of the staff. He's responsible for every event that happens here. He's responsible for representing the town at all levels, not us, him. So why does he not have the power to go with that? So I am actually in favor of this. I'm sorry, that's the way I feel. I come from a corporate background. CEO has powers. And even now, those aren't a lot of powers. Those are some. So there's where I stand, and I certainly endorse it. I thought, this, as Councillor DeFlavio said, that the ship has already sailed. I don't even know why we're debating this tonight. I thought we were gone on from this. So here we are again, rehashing stuff which we shouldn't be rehashing. It's been legislated by the Ontario government. Let's move ahead and be done with it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I too have a different approach to this. I think a lot of the concerns I'm hearing from my colleagues around the council table here is the gear towards housing and the proximity of, say, a mayor getting pressured to approve more housing faster. I think we also need to look at the last provincial election showed us that the status quo was not okay, that we do need to build homes faster, and it's not just my generation, but it's become a multi-generational issue now. So these powers are only limited to provincial mandates or provincial objectives, which were voted on. So there still is, I don't see as big a loss of democracy as maybe some of you. It's a priority that's been laid out by the provincial government, openly communicated, and it is what they want us creatures of the province to be following in step with. I know we may not see it the exact same way as they do, but the bottom line is that things need to happen faster. And this is a tool that 4 years ago, I would have honestly thought that the mayor had the ability to do this before I got into politics. So I really do not see this as a controversial.
Councillor Sharwell.
Through your mayor, thank you. I think there are pros and cons to both. It just depends on how it's used. My fear is more so, well, first of all, I don't like that it cuts out the public consultation. However, our provincial government was just elected, so this is what we've elected, and this is what they want. So we have to go with it. But housing is going to happen. That's a non-issue with everybody. I think everybody here realizes that it's going to happen, so that's not even an issue. My issue is maybe there's going to be, and you can clarify whether this is allowed or not, is, you know, say we have a high-density condo that's approved somewhere, and then the developer says, we're going to ask for 0 parking whatsoever. Does the mayor have the authority to say, yep, we're going to approve that 300 unit something with 0 parking? So is that something that can happen? The other concern is that the developer might say, you know, can we just not have any development charges? And that a mayor can say yes. And that can happen. So I don't know if our CAO can possibly clarify if those are possibilities, if the mayor, and again, this is not you, Mayor Jordan, this is just a mayor in the next election, if that's probably, like, if that's a possible scenario. Or if you can, Victoria, if you know a little bit more about it.
Through the mayor, the only clarification I can provide is that it says it's of the opinion of the mayor that it's in line with the provincial priorities. I would say that's a pretty broad statement.
So I think it's fair to say that those are possibilities. Again, I'm not saying that that would be you, but that's the type of power that a mayor has, and that could drastically influence, change how a community runs, and we need to be very thoughtful about who we're electing. Again, thank you.
And I still think anything like that is going to be ultimately the official plan has to be followed. Ultimately, if something is being changed, it's going to be the Committee of Adjustment as well as a fallback. And I can't see like radical changes with no parking. I'm certainly, and I speak as myself, not fully aware of all the legislation and what's involved at this point, but I ultimately want what's best for Grimsby, and I will fight to the bitter end to make sure this can be the best community in Ontario, and we'll fight for the fabric of having a small town, even if we are pressured with growth by the province. So we have to grow smart and not sprawl and infill and just manage things with the staff that we can rely on, both planning, community services, to keep the fabric of the town and plan for the future, and plan for the future as a council, in my opinion. All right, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the staff memo on strong mayor powers be received for information. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the Niagara Transit Annual Report and 2025 Quarter 1 statistics? Councillor Howe? Councillor Bradsey, any discussion? Councillor Sharwa?
Just briefly, thank you. And I don't know if this is directed to Councillor Freak being on the board. I was just hoping that we could get some specific numbers. So when I kind of briefly went through that with NRT, I noticed, Niagara on the Lake uses microtransit a lot more than Grimsby. So I was just hoping we could get a little bit more specific on that. Are we paying around the same as them? Do you know what cost-wise, how that?
To you, Mr. Mayor, no. It would be different per municipality. But I will get that information for you. If you don't mind, maybe the clerk can send me a note, and I'll follow up with Sarah, with Ms. Stout, and get that information for you. It should be, I thought it was in there, but maybe it's not.
No, yeah, just a little bit more specific would be great. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions, moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Bradsey, resolved that the Niagara Transit 2024 Annual Report and 2025 Quarter 1 statistics be received for information. All in favor? And that's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder for the Doctor's Day proclamation? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, seconder Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Frake, whereas communities across Ontario are recognizing May 1st, 2025 as Doctor's Day to express gratitude to physicians for their compassionate care, dedication, and continued commitment to improving the health of people in our community, and whereas here in Niagara, more than 600 physicians across a wide range of specialties are transforming care every day, collaborating with healthcare teams, embracing innovation, and going above and beyond for their patients, and whereas we all also thank physicians who have retired this year for their years of service, and we warmly welcome the newest physicians to our region, and whereas we are proud to recognize Doctors' Day and express our sincere appreciation to all physicians for their extraordinary work in shaping a healthier Niagara. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Jeff Jordan, do hereby proclaim May 1st as 2025 as Doctors' Day. All in favor? That's carried. Can I get a mover and seconder for the Museum Month proclamation? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Sharwa. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Sharwa, whereas the 700-plus museums and art galleries and heritage sites and the over 8,000 museum workers and 16,000 volunteers contribute to Ontario's $26 billion cultural sector, and whereas museums as trusted local organizations create healthy and connected communities, and by ensuring all Ontarians have access to culture and heritage, inspire lifelong learning, and whereas museums promote growth and build local economies by welcoming tourists in every community across the province, and whereas this month provides opportunity to raise awareness for the vital role museums and museum workers and volunteers have in their communities and celebrate their contributions to community well-being, tourism, education, and learning. And whereas May 18th, 2025 is International Museum Day to highlight museums as centers of education, innovation, and cultural understanding in our communities. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Jeff Jordan, do hereby proclaim May 2025 as May as Museum Month in Grimsby and encourage all residents and tourists to visit our local museums in May. All in favor? And that's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 2522 to 2524 inclusive, and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? And that's carried. Before we go into close, the next meeting is scheduled for May 26, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. Can Can I have a mover and seconder to move into closed session to discuss Grimsby Green appointments, business ambassador appointments, and ongoing bylaw matters? Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that council move into closed session under Section 2392B of the Municipal Act, where a closed meeting is held to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, specifically to appoint Grimsby Green Advisory Committee members and Grimsby business ambassadors, and Section 2392E of the Municipal Act, where a closed meeting is held to discuss litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, specifically regarding ongoing bylaw matters. All in favor to go into close? That's carried. We'll come back into open after the closed session. We're now into closed. That's carried. All right, welcome back. We're now back into open session. Can I have a mover and seconder for the closed session direction? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Sharwa. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Sharwa. Resolved that Council directs staff to contact the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee candidates to advise them of their application status, and one, that Council directs staff to contact the business ambassador candidates to advise them of their application status, and two, that direction regarding ongoing bylaw matters be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw? Moved by Councillor Frake, seconded by Councillor Korstanji. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 2525 and that same be read a first time, considered and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.